Just checking that everything is online properly. Just a moment. It's not going everywhere that I wanted it to, because I cannot see it on my regular page. Okay, I might just have to share from one to the other just to make sure. Because I don't see it. Okay, so this week we have a lot on. I was hoping that as we get closer to the election, everything would have picked up a notch. Turns out that's going to take some time. This does feel like an election cycle. As each day passes, you can see the pledges are getting crazier and the rhetoric just going wild. I want to make everyone aware of just where we're at right now. So we've got the Senator Fioravanti-Wells. We've got a story on her. We've got food war and how it affected Reddit. We have budget talk, Bob Katter, talk on the floods. We've got what would happen if Scott Morrison wasn't PM, who would they be voting for, an Albanese speech and more. So strap in for a wonderful evening of This Week in Politics. 1 second. My crazy hair is just had it good, and then I had to take off my headphones for a second, and now it's all sticky uppy and making me go crazy. Okay, hoping that you'll enjoy this stream. So first up, we have the takedown of Scott Morrison. Now, I don't know how many of you got to see this, but I really thought, hey, this is the speech that we all should be listening to as this comes along. Take a listen. Oh, why is there no sound on that? Is it my headphones or, oh no, here we go. Unmute.
Are you calling an election this week?
Okay, I'll see you over that one.
Is he calling an election this weekend?
The election will be in mid-May.
You're not answering the question.
Are you addressing the cost of living, or is it just the cost of winning?
No, it's about cost of living.
And a stronger future.
Why should not voters see this close to $9 billion in temporary one-off payments, one-off excise cuts as nothing short of one big, massive pre-election bribe?
What, you don't think these cost of living pressures are real? I know they're real.
Today was all supposed to be about selling the budget in the time-honoured way. It was probably inevitable with an election imminent that a lot of the media's questions would be about election timing. What the Prime Minister couldn't possibly have anticipated, though, was that the process of selling the budget was about to be derailed.
He is adept at running with the foxes and hunting with the hounds, lacking the moral compass and having no conscience. His actions conflict with his portrayal as a man of faith. He has used his so-called faith as a marketing advantage. It is his way or the highway, an autocrat, a bully who has no moral compass.
You may have heard some of the colourful aspects of Liberal Senator Concetta Fioravanti-Wells' astonishing attack on the Prime Minister in the Senate last night. Many have zeroed in on her claims the PM is a bully, but it was a much more widespread series of claims than that, with statements like this.
There is a putrid stench of corruption emanating from the New South Wales division of the Liberal Party. And I look forward to the day when Hawke will be required to give evidence under oath to explain his corrupt conduct. In my public life, I have met ruthless people. Morrison tops the list, followed closely by Hawke. Morrison is not fit to be Prime Minister, and Hawke certainly is not fit to be a minister.
The Senator also had Immigration Minister Alex Hawke, the PM proxy in New South Wales State Party matters, in her sights, and accused Scott Morrison of, quote, bullying his way to a situation where the next election has been put at risk, all to save Hawke's career. She also accused Alex Hawke of being involved in fraudulent activities and corruption involving...
Yeah, there's been a lot of commentary on stuff like this, and I think that this is going to come out as the story. We need to build momentum on this. So I really, really want to put that out there. I think a lot of people have an amazing take on this. There's some amazing videos out there that's coming out about exactly this. Friendly Geordie's also did an amazing take on it too.
Branch membership records. Firavanti Wells said the controversies engulfing the New South Wales division in recent months had disgusted the party rank and file.
They have lost faith in the party. They want to leave. They don't like Morrison and they don't trust him. They continue to despair at our prospects at the next federal election, and they blame Morrison for this. Our members do not want to help in the upcoming election.
The fallout from this bitter factional brawl over New South Wales pre-selections comes in many forms. As the Senator said, it poses problems of rank-and-file manpower on the ground during the looming election campaign. It means the government still has to nominate candidates in some seats, meaning it will be difficult to call an election for at least some days. And of course, it derailed the budget sales task as the PM found himself fending off questions about this attack, which he suggested was simply bitterness on the Senator's part over being dumped from a safe spot on the New South Wales Senate ticket. But Scott Morrison's day was about to get even worse.
He is a bully, and I back the Senator up completely with that. He is a bully because I have experienced it myself. He's a man, you do it my way or there's no way.
And there were more contributions which had the effect of blunting all the talk of the past week about how bullying was a problem in the Labor Party.
It seems it's not a man thing, a faction thing, a party thing, but it certainly can be a political thing.
Now, it's important to point out at this point that they need to like both sides this, because at every angle, no matter how many years go on and how many years that the LNP does not have a quota for promoting women into the boys club, which is yeah, Pauline definitely has jumped. She's jumping the shark, but I don't think she's ever been she's always adapted to the LNP policy, but wanted her own thing, her own shtick, if you will. And that way she sounds like she's better than everyone else, but will have the same weird philosophy as the Liberal Party. What is going to make this interesting is how they're going to shift the narrative somehow. And trust me, you should be waiting for it. They're going to say somewhere along the line how this will be Labor's fault. Mark my words on it. Somewhere along the line, they're going to be like, no, it's Labor's fault. I will continue the video. This is amazing, by the way.
I think of the premature death of my colleague Kimberly Kitching, and one thing that haunts me is that so easily could have been me. We can honour her memory by not making this a political issue, but by fixing it. So politics is a better place, particularly...
Yeah, I don't want to be one of those people that keep stopping, but this is true. Pauline Hanson did spend time in jail for a type of fraud, and it has to do with something that Tony Abbott got her on. Now, she has never liked the Liberal Party based upon that idea, but she likes their ethos. That's just part of how she functions. It's her... because she originally was part of the Liberal Party. Much like Clive Palmer, they pretend to be outsiders, you know. They go and get them kind of people. But if you notice that a lot of their people come from the base of the Liberal Party, that's super duper important to remember as we're watching stuff like this.
Particularly for women.
The Prime Minister had agreed to make his first appearance on 7:30 tonight in almost a year, but cancelled at lunchtime due to what his office said was a clash. It was left to Treasurer Josh Frydenberg to try to get the budget conversation back on track.
This is a budget for the times, and this budget will deliver a strong economy and a stronger future.
Though the Treasurer seemed to spend at least as
Spoiler alert, it does none of that, Mr. Frydenberg. That's a later issue. But no, it was horrible. It was a horrible, horrible budget.
much time talking about Labor as he did about his own budget.
And a Labor Party led by Anthony Albanese that has largely hidden from view for the last 3 years.
Oh yeah? And where's Mr. Morrison? I'd like to see where Mr. Morrison is. Where was his scheduled appearance at the ABC after budget? Which you shouldn't miss, by the way, Mr. Morrison. You want to claim where people are? Or what about when the bushfires were? Hawaii seemed like the better idea. Or when the floods hit, you claim to have had gotten COVID. I mean, my God, this is the moment that we're all looking at in real time. The one response that they have to this is, where is Albo? No, he's out there. Now, I'm about to show you how many speeches that guy's made, and they're excellent. But when you listen to Josh Frydenberg, apparently Albo's nowhere and everywhere all at the same time, because they like to two sides everything. There was even a budget reply speech from Anthony Albanese. Oh yeah? Where's the Prime Minister? As always, they're such bad actors, really bad.
Trying to sneak into government with little more than a false and fanciful promise that he would govern like Bob Hawke and John Howard. The opposite.
Oh yeah? And you're governing like who? Like an idiot who thought that being an economist was a bad thing. That was your shtick, remember? Remember the whole, why would Anthony Albanese prove that he studied economics? Dude, you're running a freaking country. Why would you not study economics? Why would people put you in charge of this stuff? Because you're an idiot. Only a party that has buddies does this sort of stuff. It's utterly repugnant to its core that we're having this conversation still. Exactly. Fraudenberg, an apt name. He ultimately has gotten underneath my skin, and here's why. They pick on people for being intelligent. That is the ultimate school kid bully that never learned how to take the brain and actually do anything with it out of school. And then they hire these friends from out of school that never got it, and they join the Liberal Party. And that's essentially what we have. We have a bunch of school bullies running out the Liberal Party telling you that smart people were the bad ones. Yeah, he can't even get basic economics right. You had, what was Scott Morrison's thing? He couldn't add up to 8. It's repugnant to its core. I don't know why we're still doing this with these people. It's fraud at the highest level. Oh, please, for the love of God, we have to get rid of them. They are a blight on everything that we could have. If we want to be better than this, we gotta get rid of them. We can't let any of them keep their seats. I want to start with Scott Morrison and Dutton. If they don't go this time, my God, we're in big trouble.
It would be true.
When I bought the business 21...
Wait. Jim's Mowing is a multi-million-dollar company. Why are they giving that free advert? Oh, come on. Dave, that's got to be dodgy, right? Nah, there's something wrong. It's like the fake trading agreement. What the hell is going on here? I run a lawn mowing business. I've never once pawned it off onto this. Are you insane?
Months ago, I was paying $1.19 for diesel. Now I'm paying $2.25 to $2.30.
The message the government wants voters like Luke Haggett to focus on is its budget pitch on the cost of living, in particular the cut to the fuel excise for a 6-month period. It's one of Luke's main business expenses, and his ability to raise his own prices is constrained.
Unfortunately, in my industry, there's a ceiling. It's deemed what is appropriate to pay. There's a level. I had my prices up to where they are before the fuel went crazy, so I've had to wear that extra fuel cost every week.
He's sceptical the 6-month measure will make a real dent in prices.
I don't think...
Is he pretending to mow a lawn that's already looking mowed? You people can't even do this properly. Oh my God, I do this for a living, at least do it in a yard that looks like it. Oh, they're so terrible at this. Oh my God, appalling.
We'll see it. If we see it, it won't be for very long. You might see it at the pump for a week. But petrol stations like the margin, they say there's no money in fuel. I don't believe that. But B, it's only 20 cents. Fuel's jumped by $1.20. So what does 20 cents do? I'm still 80% above where I was before. So while that's great, it doesn't get passed along to my net profit because I dare say it'll get eaten up. Look, there's many avenues that they can help. The biggest costs, in my opinion, to a young family like us that needs to be looked at and can be measured and reduced and help us is childcare.
Ali Fortuna returned to work.
The childcare policy that the LNP do not have? You mean that thing that ALP have but the LNP do not? Okay, yeah, this isn't going to go well. And I agree that the fuel excise needs to come down more than 20 cents a litre. I run the same business. But do you know what I don't do? I don't use a freaking franchise to cover all my overheads. I do that myself, which means I don't have that franchise dipping in to help me out. I just run a mum and dad business. It's amazing the difference in what I do to what they're doing. I don't begrudge a person who needs to do that, but I think that they should use people that are real doing it the way we do it. You know, it's really bloody difficult to say that you've got all these overheads when people like me can't just write everything off. We need to be very particular and run our own ABNs. It's incredible.
Full-time in real estate after having her first child, Evie. But when the second child came along, the calculation changed.
Throwing a second child in, there was just no way that we could do full-time childcare for both kids. So hence why we've decided, that I will work part-time and now going down the consult.
That is an excellent question. We did store a lot of fuel in the US, like thousands of litres. Somehow it doesn't exist now. Our country for decades has been running fuel that is typically never stored here. We always use offshore for some reason. Why we never built the proper facility to hold our fuel? We're supposed to have a year of fuel in stock. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's because of war provisions and everything else. You know, the thing that everyone's going on about right now with Ukraine and everything else. We're supposed to have this stuff. It's supposed to be there, and if it isn't, I think that we need to talk about putting a government in that quite literally deals with moments like this. We do have also a deal with the US that they're supposed to hand it to us whenever we want it to. No one has said a word. It wouldn't surprise me if this was like the water deal. When Barnaby Joy said, I've got all this water, it's amazing water. Okay, where's the water? I don't know. I find it difficult to believe that the government literally has these fuel the fuel kept somewhere else. It just doesn't seem likely to me.
Consulting route, I would definitely be looking to go back into the workforce more if childcare was more affordable. But with the 2 kids in daycare full time, it's not really an option for us.
Ali says her childcare costs have gone up $12 a day in the last year alone. And while she says the cost of living measures in the budget...
$12 a day. Now, you wouldn't think so, but if you've got 2 kids, that's a huge, huge overhead. And you got to think that's just the extra of what she was paying before. So this isn't like she's getting lots out of this. It's reprehensible. It's almost not worth it for her to do it. But the education behind doing it is well worth paying for. I don't know. But that's not actually going to the childcare workers either. I have family that also works in childcare and they're not seeing any of the bump up in their pay packets. So I don't know how it works. I'm not going to pretend to.
budget, like the $420 tax rebate, are welcome, they're not sufficient.
$420 doesn't go very far. It wouldn't even cover the costs of 2 kids in daycare for 2 days. I'd certainly like to see the costs of childcare further subsidised.
To date, there's no sign of a move on any major new initiative on childcare from the government.
Yep, not from this government, but if you elect a Labor government, they definitely do have a policy that deals with all of this stuff. And every government around the world should be dealing this stuff. They talk about birth rates and how they should have a right to tell women what to do with their bodies, but they don't want to deal with the repercussions of what happens to that body, say if a child is born. Yes, the government definitely should be in investing in preschool learning, because I think it's fundamental for every child. Each of my children attended it. Doesn't work for everyone, but it worked brilliant for me. Helped me with parenting and everything.
It seems strange, given Labor has signalled it will run hard on childcare as a cost of living, productivity and workforce issue. Both sides of politics may say the election is about jobs and wages, but their approaches to the issues are starting to look quite different.
See, now that's super important as we're dealing in this. This is going to come up a lot. The cost of living Labor is prepared to deal with. They're prepared to deal in what happens to childcare, what happens to your food budget, what happens to the fuel costs. Because you've got to remember, as each fuel increase comes in, that will be ticketed on to getting food in the supermarket. That'll be ticketed on to getting prescriptions, everything you do. They're going to add that little bit to it. Every service that you're getting provided, they're going to say, well, it's costing us a little bit more to run our overheads. That's why the fuel thing is so darn important. Before this, I didn't know that they were grabbing 44 cents a litre. Pure tax. That's a lot of bloody money. They're getting 44 cents a litre. That is so much money. But I think that this is where the Liberal Party get confused, because they don't know how to have economic talks. They think it's about smashed avo and toast. They don't really know what people are really struggling with. They were asked, what's the cheapest loaf of bread? They can't answer this stuff. Why? Because they don't have a damn clue. They haven't had to have the realizing that there's no bread in the cupboard, and it's the 7 o'clock run to Coles very quickly to make sure that there's something there for the kids in the morning. They would have people that take care of this. And I've experienced the other end of this, and like everyone else has, the real person isn't connected with. That's where I think Albo comes in. But I have another story on the food war. Now, this is going to come up a lot. Now, what I think has happened is this is going to get incrementally more expensive. Do not think that we aren't in for a big hit. And I really think that in between the pandemic and truck drivers not being available, shelf stackers and general staff, so we have food shortages as well as fuel costs. So what we're going to be looking at is some major big problems here. Okay, Coles and Woolworths shoppers have been watched as price of everything from soft drinks to petrol have soared over the past few months, and it appears that vegetables are now on the list. Now, this is going to get Redditors users were sent into a spin earlier this week when users at Hasherton shared photos from their product sections of their local supermarkets. The pics showed broccoli retailing a whopping $9.90 a kilo, while the iceberg lettuce was advertised at $5.50. Madness never been better at time to start a veggie garden, one of the Redditors joked, the broccoli price. Now, I've always wanted to have a garden. I make no secret, but I kill them. It's like I'm the vegetable killer. You know, herbs were too much for me to handle. I am trying to get the kids involved because I think that they're the answer and they know how to do things. What I'd like to do is have my mother come over every once in a while and show me where I'm going horribly wrong, but she's good at everything like this. Many Redditors identified the photographs as having been snapped at Coles, while others confirmed similar price rises at their local Woolworths stores. Woolies yesterday, I saw one of those price dropped from $22 for a 30-pack of soft drink, down from $32 February 28th, one person wrote. $7.90 for a Wombok cabbage. My bunnies, said another. I went into Woolies recently planning on buying a cauliflower until I saw that they were $8 each, commented a third. Now, this has an impact on food. This is what I was going back to before in terms of fuel excise and everything else. What we are going to experience is going to be painful. Now the rubber hits the road. What this means politically, I don't know. But I think that Anthony Albanese has the right rhetoric in talking about this sort of stuff. He has a policy that deals with this stuff. Hiring the workforce, making it safe, and then talking about what is in store for our future. My local Coles and Woolies have both put their prices up across the board. Something like 10 to 20% in the last few weeks. You don't notice it until you encounter something where you remember the old prices are for. Nearly everything routinely I buy seems to have increased 15 to 20%. And they're not small. What's going on? The images sparked a debate on Reddit where users were trying to figure out the reason for the price. Between war, floods, droughts, struggling economy, we won't be able to get everything all at one time, one person wrote. And I think that's where I want to make the point. In between all of those issues, did we really think the same old was going to work? Opening up the economy had its downfalls. Welcome to the downfall. Those of you who just wanted life back to the same old, this is what it was met with. A lot of sickness, a lot of death, and a lot of shortages that were quite manageable during the lockdown because people were just getting what they needed and leaving. Now it's masks off and walking into your grocery store and it's $9 for a bit of cauliflower because they don't have the staff to facilitate the store to put out all the product, and then they don't have the truck driver to be able to take it to the store that you need, and the floods particularly played a big role in this. Now, when we talk about what happened with the floods, it's going to get worse because I believe that a lot of crops were destroyed in the floods, particularly in some of the regions that I've noted. There were a lot of crop areas that were hit too. I don't know how much you know about some of these areas, but I personally know people that were impacted by these floods who do supply food to grocery stores. It's not cool, and I think we're in a bit of trouble. So I think that this is also why we need a change of government. I don't think the LNP are equipped to deal with the flood cleanup or with the resounding message that prices of food is going to go up. That is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with at some point. Okay, next one. Next we're going to talk budget. Now, I don't know how much you've seen, but this budget was appalling. I think the thing that got me was I want to go to the reply speech first, because what Frydenberg says isn't, if you will, correct. And I think Albo's reply speech definitely has more of the right tone for the right moment. Did I?
Imagine.
I did. Okay.
Living just 500 metres to the beach in this stunning $1 million Sunshine Coast home. Enjoy.
The weird advertisements that they've got for this. Oh, now I'm missing it.
And tonight, at the heart of my third budget reply, is our plan to fix the crisis in aged care. Tonight I'm announcing Labor's plan to put security, dignity, quality and humanity back into aged care. Put simply, to put the care back into aged care. The global pandemic and a Royal Commission have confirmed what so many Australians already knew, that our aged care system is in crisis. More of us are living long enough to need extra care in our later years. But currently that thought fills a generation of Australians and their families with dread. Older Australians fear that the final chapter of their life will be an aged care facility where they are not properly cared for, let alone afforded real dignity. Their children wrestle with the dilemma of sending them to a place that might not be good enough versus the risk of leaving them at home when it's becoming unsafe for them to be on their own. We've all been chilled by stories of unforgivable neglect, maggots in wounds, people going days without fresh air, a shower, or a change of clothes. Stories of residents lying on the floor, crying out in pain, and nobody is there to help them. It goes against everything we are as Australians. And while our loved ones suffer and their carers, mostly women, are underpaid and overworked, some of the operators running these places are doing very well. It's no coincidence that COVID swept through some aged care facilities with such deadly force, because for far too long, the Liberals have turned a blind eye to operators who put profit ahead of the people in their care. The simple truth of it is this: the Liberals and Nationals have had a decade to do something about aged care. Even an interim Royal Commission report with the searing one-word title, neglect, wasn't enough to spur them into action. If they are left in power, nothing will change. And the bleak present they have created will be the bleak future awaiting so many more Australians. Now, I know that there are many facilities out there that do a magnificent job caring for people. And I know the aged care workers, such as those in the gallery today, show up every day and do their absolute best with what they have, showing love and respect for those in their care. But those workers are the first to tell you that the system is at breaking point. People are leaving the industry. If you want to change aged care in this country for the better, then we need to start by changing the government. Tonight I announce 5 concrete, practical measures a Labor government will implement to ensure older Australians receive the aged care they deserve. 1. Under a Labor government, every aged care facility will be required to have a registered, qualified nurse on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mr. Speaker, we are going to put the nurses back into nursing homes. This will save thousands of stressful, expensive and ultimately unnecessary trips to hospital emergency departments for issues which a nurse, with all of their skills, could solve on the spot. Because every Australian living in aged care should get the medical attention they need the moment they need it, day or night. This is just common sense and it is common decency. 2, we are going to raise the standard of aged care across the board by ensuring there are more carers who have more time to care. We will mandate that every Australian living in aged care receives a minimum of 215 minutes of care per day as recommended by the Royal Commission. That means more care for every resident every day. So if you have a loved one in aged care, you can be certain.
The people you hear cheering in the stands, a lot of them are nurses that turned up for Albo's reply speech. So I don't know how many people got to see that, but I think it's incredible that real nurses turned out for this.
They will get more time with a registered nurse and more time with enrolled nurses and personal care workers, not just for essential medical treatment, but basic, important things like helping people take a shower, get dressed, eat a meal, and also the time to talk, the chance to have a conversation that isn't about medication or hygiene or a sudden emergency. Some company and human interaction, especially on those days when a family member can't visit. A reminder that our older Australians aren't just a number. They aren't a burden. They are people who built this country, who deserve respect, courtesy and the best possible attention. 3, a Labor government I lead will back a real pay rise for aged care workers. At the start of this year, the Prime Minister announced a one-off pre-election payment for aged care workers. This week it was reported that over 90% of them, due in March, still haven't received a cent. That is this government in a nutshell. A big announcement, no delivery. Too little, too late. Labor knows that these carers who work long hours doing such important and often backbreaking work are underpaid and undervalued, with some earning as little as $22 an hour. Unlike this Prime Minister, who won't take responsibility, a Labor government won't muck around. We'll support the workers' call for better pay at the Fair Work Commission, and a Labor government will fund the outcome of this case. Because if we want higher standards of care, we need to support higher wages for our carers. We know if we want to recruit and retain more carers to look after a population that's growing older, we need to treat their vital and essential work with respect and reward it with better pay. Number 4 is about better food for residents. A really hard part of growing old and losing some of your independence is not being able to cook for yourself, let alone visitors or family. For most of us, meals are something we look forward to, a daily ritual that brings us together, gives us moments of joy. This makes it all the more outrageous when the food served up to some Australians in aged care is a scandal itself. The interim Royal Commission report found that over half of aged care residents, think about that, over half, were not getting enough nutrition. They are literally starving. We are going to change that. A Labor government will work with the sector to develop and implement mandatory nutrition standards for aged care homes to ensure that every resident gets good food. Tasty and nutritious meals which respect cultural, religious and dietary requirements. And the 5th part of our plan to fix the aged care crisis is about integrity and accountability. Labor will deliver new funding, more staff and better support to the aged care sector. And I'm determined to see that every single dollar of that investment goes to better care for people. We will work with multicultural communities to support culturally appropriate care because we know that many older people revert to the language of their birth in their later years. We will give the Aged Care Safety Commissioner new powers, and we will make residential care providers report in public and in detail what they are spending money on. The days of residents going without decent food and clean clothes will come to an end. Our plan: registered nurses on site 24/7, more carers with more time to care, a pay rise for aged care workers, better food for residents and dollars going to care. That's how a Labor government will solve the crisis in aged care.
Okay, so what does that mean for a very, very, very big political year? So I believe that this can change everything about what we're doing. I fundamentally believe Anthony Albanese has the fortitude to deal with this stuff adequately. They've watched on the sidelines as the Liberal government have slashed things to its core when it just wasn't necessary. While they were helping out their buddies with car parks on water that doesn't exist, and probably fuel too, and subs that we just do not need, we ultimately watch the downfall of the country. While our elderly were given an understaffed facility to work in, and there was no real help for these people, the government wasn't interested in running this like the people mattered. None of it mattered. Even the subs still didn't matter. The French said he lied, the Americans were embarrassed, and now we've got egg on our faces. There's nothing about this government that you can truly say is for the betterment of anyone. So I will put it to Scott Morrison as to why he thinks that's appropriate. I don't think he's going to have a better response to it than that, but we will see where we go.
Can I thank Denisha, and can I also acknowledge the traditional owners and say how proud I am that an Albanese Labor government will implement the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Thanks to Annika, the committee and the workers here for hosting us at Kedron Wavell, a great neighbourhood club in Lily and an evacuation centre during the floods. And thanks Terry for that characteristically kind introduction as well. What an honour it is to serve with you in the Shadow Cabinet, with Shane and Milton in the Shadow Ministry, and with Shane and Murray in the Shadow Ministry, and with Annika, Milton, Graham, Anthony and Nita as proud Queenslanders in our nation's parliament, and with Swanee as the keeper of the flame as ALP National President. And to work for and with the mighty members and candidates and supporters, volunteers, unions and true believers of our Labor movement. Thank you for coming out in such numbers today and with such enthusiasm. And what a time it is to gather. A few days before the election's called and a few days after the budget. I'm proud of our response to the budget. I'm especially proud of Anthony's reply, and I'm proud of the team which made it all happen. Because another 3 years of stagnant wages, job insecurity and flatlining living standards can't be the thanks that Australians get for the sacrifices that we've made for each other. Neglect of older Australians and the essential workers who care for them can't be the thanks that they get. Generational debt without a generational dividend can't be the thanks that our kids get. We all understand here that our mission is to make our economy and our society stronger after COVID than it was before. To learn the lessons of the pandemic, that we can't have a healthy economy without healthy people. And to ensure that as the national economy recovers, Queensland workers and industries are a bigger part of the story. You see, budgets at their best lay the foundations for the future. They tell a story about where people fit in an unfolding story of economic success and economic inclusion and economic mobility. Governments at their worst just push the most pressing challenges from one side of an election to the other side of an election, hoping that the luck will run out on somebody else's watch. And Australians deserve so much better than this. We've seen what we can achieve in the most difficult times. How much more could we achieve with real leadership and with a real leader? Not a Prime Minister who goes missing. Not a Prime Minister who determines flood relief based on whether you live in a Labor seat or a coalition seat, or which side of the border you live on, or the political affiliation of the Premier. Time and time again, Scott Morrison turns his back on Queenslanders when we need him the most. Friends, real leadership is taking responsibility, not just taking credit. Not just pointing the finger of blame when things get difficult, but most of all, above all else, it's about bringing people together, finding common ground, applying common sense for the common good. Not looking for division or picking needless fights. Not jetting into Queensland from time to time, staying just long enough to bag Premier Palaszczuk, to diminish and deride our collective efforts to battle this virus, to overpromise and underdeliver on infrastructure, to cuddle up and cosy up to Clive Palmer and Campbell Newman and Pauline Hanson, his very own little coalition of chaos, to pose with a 4X tinny and the Lord Mayor, then turn around and disappear again. Friends, when the election is finally called, the people will choose. They'll choose between a Prime Minister who goes missing, points the finger and divides us, who is temperamentally incapable of taking responsibility and therefore temperamentally incapable of leadership, whose only idea of transparency in government is a glass jaw, a fake and a phony. Or they can have a real leader in Anthony Albanese with a real plan based on real interactions with real people. And I've seen this for myself. I've known him a long time, spent time with him in every corner of Queensland, in good times and in tough times. I've seen the way he actually listens and makes connections with people, as a minister, as Deputy Prime Minister, and now as our leader. He doesn't just show up when an election's on. He shows up and he stands up when Australians need him, when Queenslanders need him. He takes responsibility, but he shares the credit. And he'll bring us together again as a country, because he's as forward-looking and optimistic and compassionate as the Australian people themselves. He's an honorary Queenslander with a real affinity for Queenslanders who will govern for the whole country. Please welcome the next Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese.
Now, if the Prime Minister or anyone else wants to say where's Albo, I don't know, I just showed you about 3 different videos of where he is. That's what seems to be the keynote speech here. The Prime Minister can always deflect and say whatever he likes about where's Albo. I just showed you 3 different videos of different events that Anthony Albanese was at. And before anyone makes a comment about the unfortunate issue at Shane Warne's memorial where he was booed, and then he claimed miraculously that there was a group of people that mobbed him in support. I know other Prime Ministers have been booed at events, but there's something very vitriolic about what is going on with Scott Morrison. When you have senators in his own party saying, no, you went too far this time. When you have premiers that are LMP saying he's a mean, nasty bully. When you have people that know him at his worst. I think that there is, if you remember the image of Scott Morrison with Gladys Berejiklian talking to the fire chief, and his positioning and his body language, very aggressive. They're now starting to talk about what happened in the seat of Cook and how he cheated every way that he could have. You know what I found interesting? The Senator Fierravanti-Wells also pointed out the job that he had in Tourism Australia. So they know damn well who they're dealing with. They know what sort of a fraud he is. You know what disappoints me is that they all helped him to get there. And now that the knives are out to play, they don't want to play no more. No, you don't get to pick and choose this. You chose this idiot for your leader. Now stand there and buckle up, buddy, because it's about to get real freaking painful for your party. You went from one idiot that was more aloof than the next. Now you have chosen the ultimate idiot. I'm hoping, and if the poll numbers are right, we are getting rid of this lunatic. But in the meantime, even if he's saying that he's going to call a snap election, he's going to wait until some of these numbers start to look a little bit better for him. That's what he's doing. Inside sources are leaking to the media. They can't wait to tell you what a horrible, horrible little man he is. There's more stories. Scott Morrison thinks he's done with Senator Wells. And when her time is up on July 1st, I think it is, I think this is going to be a real rough ride. And if we were under the assumption that all this leaking was done, it's going to look like fire in a pit. Everything I've seen right now, there are stories that are being fenced to the media and they're reluctant to do anything. When they had the Senator's comments on the record, they were asked flat out, will you run a page one story? By several people on Twitter. It was clear. The PR guy that they're always attacking, he went up and he was like, hey, going to run this as a page one story, right? You would if it was Labor. So they were left with egg on their faces, did it to a page 14 outlay, and then pretended like nothing to see here. If it wasn't for Twitter overdoing and overcooking this situation, I don't think we would be hearing about it. 9 News had to touch on it last night. I was the unlucky ducky at my parents' last night watching that bullcrap play out in real time. They did this piece of, it's in between, I couldn't find it. I went to look for it and I couldn't find it. They did this story of how Scott Morrison stole the seat of Cook. But Peter Costello couldn't let that be the narrative. They found a little girl that had a weird, unusual disease. One that I'd never heard of, and it was very sad. And I remember thinking, oh, that's terrible. But then they featured the Prime Minister saying how much he's going to help out. So they turned what is a story that they know that the Prime Minister is a bully. And then they were like, but look, he's helping children. How can you be mad? It's appalling. There's no other way to put it. I mean, to even run the story, like to go to physically go to the paper and the news and have someone sit there and then go, no, it's really a good thing that we're showing you the bad part about Scott Morrison. But quick, he gets to be the big saviour of someone in the end. No, this isn't a little children's novel. You don't get to do that, Peter Costello. You don't get to pick and choose. The guy is a dud, and you can put glitter on crap. It's still going to be crap. I know it pains you to do it. I know when Gladys Berejiklian was being, questioned by ICAC, you were like, there's supporters for her outside her office. Barely touched ICAC, but managed to get in enough time with her supporters. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? To think that we wouldn't notice that crap. Unbelievable. I'm not mad. I'm just wishing that we had a media that was really a media. That's not media. What I saw wasn't media. There are just 2 instances I can show you where there is a negative story running about a premier that is LNP or the Prime Minister, where then they'll quickly go, oh, look at all the support they've got. The Daily Mail couldn't wait to write this really raving comment that apparently there were people out there to greet the Prime Minister with praise. The Daily Mail was there to take the comments, but no one had a camera to take the picture of it. Look, let me let you in on a secret. If that was real and he was telling the truth, don't you think there would have been a picture? Don't you think it would have been more than a guy just saying, oh, the Prime Minister said lots of people met him? No. They met him outside for comment on this thing. You insane? Of course they met him outside. I think I'm at a point now where it's like, dude, just stop lying to him. And I'm telling you now, you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar, you're going to find yourself in a real bad position. Now, speaking of ScoMo, what would happen if they did a spill? An independent senator talks about just that. Okay. Check this little one out. It's 26 seconds. I hope you like this.
I do have grave concerns in relation to Scott Morrison's leadership. For me,
Interesting.
I know there are deep concerns within my community about some of the things that have occurred in the last.
So if it was a different leader of the Liberal Party in a hung parliament situation, you might back the coalition.
Josh Frydenberg's paying a lot of attention to this answer.
Let me just get an answer.
I do have grave concerns in relation to Scott Morrison.
That's part of where we're at. We're at a point where now the independents are saying, oh, why don't we just change the leader? No, dude, the fish rotted from the head a long time ago. And all the heads were rotten in the LNP. What's wrong with you? Look, Zali, you ran in a very conservative seat. I get it. You have to look like you're one of them. But dude, you leaned in too hard. You went in too hard in support of the LNP. What were you thinking? I know you want to keep your seat. You're a lovely lady, but no. You can't do the what if game if they did a spill. Would you back them? How about you just say they're done for and I should be backing the left that have got a real leader doing real things? What a loaded question from David Spears. It's just a sign that they're well and truly out of their depth on this. And even the independents are looking like idiots. They cannot contain themselves. They're falling over themselves to sound almost at ease with the idea that this is the guy that should be running the country. It's deplorable. It has no business being part of our national discussion about who runs a country. Because it wasn't who should be leader, it's if they change leaders. Do you see how that skewing of a question can change how it's perceived? It's dodgy to its core. But, you know, this is how they want to play it, and they want to play like they're playing niceties with the LNP, when it's just not nice. Next up, I want to talk about the issue with Bob Katter doubling down. And I really think the guy's deplorable. Everything he says that dribbles out of his mouth needs to stop. Now, oh, that has a spelling error. Okay. We'll just take that off. Now, when they make ridiculous statements, they need to be called an idiot. But he tends to just take...
But, Bob, look, I know you've come up with this idea, right, to arm school kids with the threat...
This is how they operate. They say something stupid, hoping that it would gain some traction. Now, Mr. Katter is not new to saying dumb things, but I just don't think this is the way to handle it. One sec. I just don't think this is what you want to be doing. For several reasons, but get into why this is such a bad idea.
But, Bob, look, I know you've come up with this idea, right, to arm school kids with the threat from China seemingly growing by the day. I mean, do you really want to see guns in schools?
Because when an idiot comes up with an idea of this monumentally stupid, let's give him a prime time spot on a network that's like xenophobic at the same time as introducing an idiot to an idea that guns in schools sound like a wonderful idea. You're catching my drift of what I think of already of this idiot. Everything that comes out of his mouth is the epitome of non-thinking.
Just there's a quick answer to your question. Ukraine. It would be subjugated and under the control of Russia, which would not be very pleasant. Would not be very pleasant. Have a look at what happened to the Uyghurs in China, if you think and want to know what's going to happen there. Why haven't the Russians been able to conquer them?
Now he slides over that. What happened to the Uyghurs in China? He can't help himself. He won't touch on who the Uyghurs are. They're Muslims in China. But he's pro-war in Iraq and Iran and Tehran, and he says things like kids should have guns in schools. Are you nuts? No kid should have a gun in a school. Wherever do you get these ideas that this is like the go-to thought in the thought bubble of ideas? He's an idiot.
Because in all of those northern European countries, there is a proliferation of firearms. I mean, most of those countries have compulsory military training. Now, I don't know what the current situation is, but you have massive gun ownership in Finland, in Sweden, and all the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah, they also have governments that protect him in times like that. And they don't get involved in needless wars and create issues. I mean, if he wants to be an idiot, at least try and understand and juxtapose the position that we're in to a Scandinavian country. It's reprehensible that we're even having this discussion. Why is he given a national platform to spew pure garbage? It's just pure garbage.
Switzerland, Israel. I mean, how come Israel can continuously win? Israel's got about 5 million people, and it continuously wins against the Arabs with 1,000 million people. How come? Because
he's an idiot who doesn't understand how geopolitics works. And he doesn't understand that Israel has been backed by people that shouldn't have been helping the bigger guy win. It just shouldn't have. A better funded side. It shouldn't have happened like that.
Because when you take on that little country, you're taking on a standing army of 5 million people.
He's an idiot.
Now, also, and I think Carl would understand this, but very few people otherwise would, it gives you self-respect. It gives you confidence.
The Bob Catter. You know that his kid does the same shtick? His kid in North Queensland, Robbie Catter, pulls the same crap. Not even kidding. Listen to the hell he said. It is like a lunatic town. That they even get a political moment. And then he tries to prop Carl up like they're the same. Good luck, Carl Stefanovic. Now you sound like a Catter person. Congratulations. I'm sure that that's a stellar moment in your career where you sound like a lunatic from Queensland, which you walked off set when it was revealed that you were born. Yes, in fact, Queensland. God, it's so embarrassing on so many levels. You tried to quit your job when your birth certificate was produced by your brother. Carl Stefanovic, if you want to be put into the same shit show as Bob Catter, be my guest, buddy. And if he wants to prop you up like you're some intelligent dude, be my guest. But this is another lunatic saying, let's give our kids guns in schools. Why would you put him on a national platform to say, let's give kids guns? What on God's green earth would you think that this was a great idea? And then he goes to Carl, yeah, we're not many people would understand this except for me and Carl. Like, for real, that's also sexist to the woman sitting there. wouldn't even assume to think that she would know what he was talking about. Like, it's confidence to have a gun. No, it isn't. It's common sense to realise that Scandinavian countries have very different rules to what we do, and they don't involve themselves in needless wars. So, and they're trained as an army for different reasons, as like a peaceful thing. When you say stupid things, it takes people like me to go, nope, you're an idiot.
It fills you with a sense of responsibility. You know, people out there in cities, they've never seen a firearm in their lives. They start, you know...
Yeah, I would be very much bemused to dispute that with him. But from a girl from a city, yes, you've seen a gun. You don't need to see a gun to realise that it's a problem. Why do they let him do this? They let him scream without thought on a national platform.
Quivering. But those people that have been used and trained properly to use it know that inculcates a sense of responsibility, a sense of self-esteem, a sense of self-reliance, and a knowledge and pride that I can protect my country and I can protect my home.
Bob, we've run out of time this morning. It is worth debate on how Australia can defend itself. We appreciate you opening up today, and for viewers at home, let us know what you think about that.
I'd love to have another hit, Carl.
Yeah.
Because I've sat down with the best brains in this country. Fortress missile wall, my friend, and behind that a guerrilla army of 5 million people.
Does he know what he's saying, or does he just say to take the piss out of people? Someone needs to have him assessed. He's definitely lost all the whatever bottles is going on in his brain.
But most of all, security for fuel and electricity.
Yep. We'll see you very soon, Bobby. We'll see you in the lead up to the election. Nice to see you, and love to your wife too. Your long-suffering wife, might I add.
Sure about guns in schools. I get nervous when we talk about such things.
I think, you know, we'll talk about it later. We're out of time now, but let's have a chat later.
Yeah, wouldn't want the women to be, you know, told that they're not, you know, part of that conversation. He's such a condescending fool. Bob Katter to even come up with the idea that, hey, let's just give kids guns. I think that that's where we're at. And to know that this is where we are, it's terrible. And his idea is terrible. Like you know that he once had an idea that every Queenslander should be armed with a gun because of crocodiles. That was his stump speech. You know how every political person has that speech that they go around and repeat? His was, and I quote, "You just should have more guns." Because guns. It's almost like he was meant to be a US politician in this country. When you listen to Bob Katter, it's almost like listening to Ted Cruz talk in the US. They just say things for the sake of saying them. They don't really understand the implications and how stupid it looks. Why would you hand kids guns? How would that make the country any safer? It's one of those things that slides out and you can't just put back into your mouth and shove away. I would like for all the Queenslanders to hear that. When this election comes round, don't be stupid enough to fall for an idiot going, let's give kids guns. That's... Why are we even having the conversation like that? I don't know, because he says stupid stuff. I mean, the next story I want to talk about is why do governments want to govern bad? Now, this has this feel to it that I've thought about for a while. Why would a government want to do something bad in an election cycle? What if I told you the plan was to be bad in the election cycle? What if I told you that the plan wasn't just to do it bad, but to get you used to the bad? And then tell you that the person doing it well isn't a good option at all. And then have a media recite that rhetoric. That's the loop we're in. And it's terrible. As we face more devastating East Coast floods, the commentary on the government's abandonment of impacted communities focused on Scott Morrison's character and obsession with the image management, right? I reckon there's more going on to the deliberate wrecking agenda. Now, this originally was coined by the military, the wrecking agenda. It was designed to make you think that governments couldn't do what they do. A decade ago, a US commander, Tom Frank, coined the idea of a wrecking crew. Politicians who perversely, deliberately, recklessly seek to govern badly in order to advance an extreme ideological agenda. That in itself tells you where we are at. We are at a moment where we can see them doing something bad. But it's not just bad, it's not even politically savvy. They just thought it was. And it's like one of them trickle-down economics ideas. It's always bad and someone has to take the hit. And it's always the public that it gets desensitized to this sort of trick. As a crikey news correspondent at large, Guy Rundle has noted Scott Morrison has pioneered his own version of destructive wrecking crew of politics in Australia. Now that part's important because Scott Morrison doesn't have a plan to govern. He has a plan to show you that government shouldn't do all those things. It shouldn't function to help you. That it's essentially useless. And Trump had the same sort of philosophy. Now, we know better. We know government does have a lot of help and can give you a lot of help along the way when it's bad. And so it should, because that's what you pay your taxes for. You pay for the government to make decisions on your health and safety that you are ultimately affected by. That's the deal, right? As Rundle says, the wrecking crew government seeks to govern so badly per the interests of those governed that the very machinery of such government is so damaged that it cannot be restored. In other words, to govern in such a way that future governing becomes very difficult as a nature because we become changed in the way that we view government operates as a wholesale agreement. Now, what this essentially means is Scott Morrison isn't running a campaign to show you what he can do better. He's running a campaign to show you just how badly governments can perform. And he wants you to rehire him based upon that very premise. That's dangerous. The aim of the wrecking crew in politics is that the whole idea of the government is damaged and discredited. People will stop believing in the power of government. In other words, if you have government that tells you all the time that it can't do this and it can't do that, and helping you would be a bad thing, which is a regular theme of the Morrison government, that, oh, even if we had done something, it wouldn't have been good enough anyway. These throwaway comments that they're making, they're not really designed to govern in a way that's governing. They're designed to show you what government can't do, not what it can do. So when you tick that box at the ballot box, remember, he's showing you what government shouldn't do, not what government should do. And it's super important that you remember this is exactly the same playbook Trump had. to do it bad, to make you think government doesn't operate well anyway, and that it's all corrupt and all bad and nothing good can come from it. This very roadmap is being laid out right before your eyes. This isn't an election based upon what he can do better for you. It's based upon what he can actually show you on what he thinks government is. So be tuned for this. This is going to get real rough real fast. Disasters offer a particularly rich, unscrupulous wrecking crew. Now, what does that mean? Take, for instance, what happened in Lismore and Ballina and Byron Bay. Those were areas that weren't typically prone to this sort of flooding. Now, climate change is real, and we have a climate-denying Prime Minister. What does that mean? Well, it means this. They're designed to govern to show you that they can't help you. And how they do it is they soften you into the idea that they shouldn't be doing it either. Naomi Klein pointed out years ago, disasters are an opportunity. Now, Naomi Klein is a podcaster. She does work for TYT. I've seen her a lot. She is really, really good. They were unthinkable time. So I think that has a link to her thing. I've seen her before. She's very, very good. When you get to see what they do, it becomes a really, really bad place to be. For instance, when Puerto Rico had their natural disaster, Trump acted like it wasn't part of the United States, and then he thought Hurricane Maria residents should just be handed paper towel. It's so below what you should be doing. It was deliberately bad or willfully blind governing for Scott Morrison. A government to objectivity and ignore numbers warning about the likelihood of floods and storms. That's the thing, he seems surprised by what's going on. If he's surprised that floods like this are bound to happen, and storms and fires, he's not fit to be Prime Minister. Not by a long shot. But don't take my word for it, take theirs. Because Scott Morrison's number one response is no one could see it coming. Really, no one could see it coming. That's a sign that he had no inclination of what climate change actually is. And any booklet he was going to bring out was going to be particularly awful. When the killer storms and the floods arrived, Morrison government was hopelessly slow to react. Despite having specific legislative powers to do so, here is someone's account of exactly what happened in that region. Now, but if the implicit ideological aim was to wreck the reputation of government, then it failed. The response may have succeeded on those terms. According to Jen Price, people have drawn the conclusion that the cavalry won't be coming. So now this is how they do it. They soften you to the idea that no one's going to come and help you because government isn't supposed to. Like they do in the US, they pretend like bad things happen and you should just pull up by your bootstraps and keep moving. When the power grid in Texas failed everyone and people died, they were like, oh yeah, this is just another day in Texas. They really didn't help out those people, and it become part of their rhetoric that government shouldn't be doing anything about it, and that's really what we've learned. Poll findings also support the proposition that the people's confidence in government has been shaken in wake of the flood. Actually, what it should show is people's confidence in this particular government. This particular government can't stump up the fortitude to do what they did. Take a look at Queensland. They've got all this stuff sorted out. They're still handing out support and backing the people. New South Wales, you wouldn't even know where Dominic Perrott was, and Scott Morrison's just AWOL. So, no. As both mainstream and social media are very appropriately full of confronting descriptions and pictures of people who have been failed by the government services. Now, this shows you quite clearly what went wrong and why the government's response is so abysmal. But it doesn't hold the Prime Minister accountable as it should. Morrison also softened the people to reduce expectations of how much people could be expected, stating that there can never be enough support in natural disasters. See, it's the ease in moment. You know what? I just couldn't make it. Yeah, right, buddy. I think what really happened is that you didn't know how, so this is what we're left with. This isn't just something that you can't pretend isn't happening. You can't just walk around and pretend, no, this didn't happen. This can't be the way that you do. The truth is that the level of support available for disaster response depends on political decisions. Even within the existing budgets, billions spent on fossil fuel subsidies, for example, could be allocated to emergency services and community resilience. Such a simple and concise message of what we could do instead of what we are doing. That means something. It is also really important to remember that this is occurring against a background of decades of neoliberal policies that shifted the risk away from corporations and cut down government onto the people and communities. It has been a euphemistically called shared responsibility. As if your house burns down, it's up to you to figure out what's going to happen. You should have had something in place. Never mind if you were a renter and couldn't afford renter's insurance. You're now homeless, you got nothing, and bam. They think that it's your fault. And I think that that's where we're at. They do not have it in them to fix this. The result, shared responsibility, is that the trauma of the natural disasters becomes compounded by the confusion and inaction of political blame games and a lack of resources with individuals. And vulnerable communities left to pick up the pieces. This is one of the most devastating floods I've ever seen. But by the look of the government, they don't even feel like they could muster up the strength to walk down the street, let alone anything else. This is something where the Prime Minister just wanted the photo of looking like he rocked up, helped clean a little, and then walked away. Nothing since then. There has been other new issues in these flood areas, new floods. You didn't see the Prime Minister. That is a telling story. But I won't let him tell it. I'm going to tell you it. Because his rhetoric is just lies. And it's not going to be an honest take on what everything happened here. So what are the aims behind the deliberate incompetence of the wrecking crew? In politics, it's grim. Defining new normal, breaking the idea of shared public goods, slashing services, privatisation, militarisation, fossil fuel extraction, just keeps going. And here is more of that detail. That's how they plan to do it. This is like, if you will, a plan that's not really a plan that involves helping you. First, wrecking crew politics drives down an agenda of cuts in government. LMP. Tax up here, help down here, somewhere in the middle, you're supposed to be able to get out. It's appalling for many, many reasons. The logic of governments as services fail. People cease to value them. So politicians feel able to cut them rather than expand and support them properly. Services that value effectiveness. The government is seen to be unreliable, and those who can afford to do so will hire private protection and private rescue services. And this already takes commonplace in the USA. So if you're rich, you're able to do really well. If you're poor, hey, you die, you die. That's the plan here. That's the end goal. Make no mistake, this isn't just a small end goal. This has caps to it that are monumentally bad for everyone. But it's going to get worse. Those who cannot afford private services would be left to overstretched charities. Peter Dutton had an idiot's caricature version of this when initiated the GoFundMe support for flood survivors. Why, when you're the government, would you go, no, I'm going to have a GoFundMe for these people? That needs to be absorbed. And that is truly the reprehensible idea of how this government works. This facilitates privatisation as weakened government services become the ripe sold off with guaranteed public income. As privatisation happens, the aim becomes profit making, not the delivery of effective public services, forcing a de facto tiered system that feeds into the vicious cycle, further corroding principles of universally public good and obscuring the truth from everyone that benefits from the greater equality. In other words, only the rich is going to get out of this. So keep electing a Conservative government. This is the end result. We're not mucking around anymore, people. These people will do you harm. They're not here to play niceties with you and pretend like they're doing awesome jobs. They're here to show you what government he believes that they shouldn't be able to do. There are plenty of extreme ideologues who would like to fully privatise emergency services from other contexts. We know that Morrison thinks that welfare must become a good deal for investors, for private investors. Do you see? It's this slimy idea that the age pension that you spent your whole life paying into, you didn't earn it. And now it's a welfare payment. That's what they do. It's grubby and it's reprehensible. Second area of government that Morrison does is expand the military with it. The militarisation of Australia life after the 2019-2020 fires, Morrison warned us to prepare for a new normal, the Defence Force moving in. Because that's how their solutions always work. It's don't make anything better, just sort of say this is the new norm. Don't have any climate change policies, this is our new norm. And so in the wake of the floods, we saw a proposed massive expansion of not climate adaptation, strengthening or slashing of emissions, but military expenditure. See, now that part's super important. Because now we're essentially saying, no. Government shouldn't be fixing things. We should just get the military in to clean up when it goes bad. Not prevent the issue. No. That would be foolish. We're just going to grab the military to make it all better. It's repugnant. Third, every disaster is used to attack the significant laws, regulations keeping people safe. The floods were no exception. Fourth, implicit wrecking crew politics. noting to interrupt profitability for fossil fuel corporations. Killer floods follow killer fires. But Morrison says the burning of coal and gas and oil driving climate disaster must go on. Yeah, this isn't great for him at all. And as you see this rhetoric up here, you realise this is bad. This is really bad. Last night's Morrison government budget further entrenched this, responding with the countless scientific warnings of the need for action and lived experience stacked on climate disasters by cutting spending. In summary, to quote the great Australian juice media, the wrecking crew prefers to get fucking used to it. Policy in dealing with climate disasters. Let's take a look at that as its whole, because I think that they do good work, these people.
Hello, I'm from the Australian Government. We know these devastating floods have been hard for you, but they've been hard for us too. They've happened on the eve of an election. And since we've abandoned, betrayed, burned, drowned or pissed off just about every living thing on this continent, we can't even resort to handshakes, cosplay and photo ops anymore. Top Gun. In our defence though, nobody could have seen this coming. I mean, sure we were briefed about a severe risk of flooding and storms just a few months ago in a report which we only released when forced to under a Freedom of Information request. And sure, scientists have warned that for each degree of warming, our atmosphere can hold 7% more water, which our own science agency told us would cause more intense flooding, as did the bomb here, the IPCC here, and more scientists here. But apart from all the warnings we ignored and suppressed, nobody could have seen this coming. Anywho, now that we've seen it, rest assured we'll still go ahead and tap into the Beetaloo, Narrabri and Scarborough gas fields, which will ensure the next floods and fires will be even worse. Of course, if Putin had caused this damage, we'd impose sanctions on him. But since it was mainly caused by our donors, we'll just give them some grants to help them keep doing it. What's that? You thought our job was to keep you safe? Oh, sweetheart. Our actual job is to keep them safe from you. That's why whenever a climate disaster like this takes place, we send out our big sack of shit in chief to the disaster area to take the heat for them and maybe pose for a photo op. Country road. It's all part of our get fucking used to it policy for dealing with climate disasters. Homes underwater, homes on fire, homes underwater and on fire. No problem. Try get fucking used to it. Cause we just have to accept that Australia's becoming a harder country to live in. For you, that is. Not for these guys who get billions of dollars in subsidies from us and live here tax-free. But if you, who does pay tax, needs to be rescued from your sinking home, we'll tell you it's your fault for building your house in the way of Chevron's trail of destruction. Some say we should introduce a levy on fossil fuel exports to make the bastards start paying for the damage they cause. But why do that when Dutto can just set up a GoFundMe and make you chip in for the costs? Go fuck yourselves. So as things fall apart, and let's be clear, these floods are just the beginning, you might want to start organising your own communities, cause you're on your own, dickheads. We'll be counting the interest on the Unspent Disaster Recovery Fund while you crowdfund choppers and rescue each other in tinnies. Or you could kick us out at the coming election and get a government that isn't captured by fossil fuel interests and who won't abandon and gaslight you as we head deeper into the climate crisis. Australian government, we'll literally get you all killed if you re-elect us in May. Authorised by the Department for Thoughts and Prayers.
Now that should be the moment that we all sit up and realise this is bad. I really want to stress this part here is fundamentally one of the most important parts I need you to see. If you want to watch that on your own time, I invite that, because I think you should. Okay, so this is where we're at. There's no going back now. I'm sickened by the wrecking crew of politicians abandoning people to disaster together. We reject the wrecking crew agenda. Australia can slash emissions and emergency speed and scale and create a safety net for every citizen facing climate damage. Did I? Nobody left behind. I've long said that the current LNP approach is not incompetence as such, but ideological driven. Obvious adoption of so many Trumpian ways and words that are obvious. From early on, the clear alt-right agenda combined with an overall sadly compliant press is frightening. That seems to be the part where I think you should get involved. But I think it's going to take a lot of work when we're having these discussions. Okay, so what happens if you're denied a right of reply? 3 years ago, we heard one of Scott Morrison's schools was speaking out about him then. This story has now resurfaced. Now, what happens if a right of reply is hidden? Okay, so... Oh, no, I'm not meant to be doing... Hold on. Before I get to that story, there is a better one. That was following on for that one. It's meant to be about the floods. I knew I was forgetting something. I skipped a whole step. And I knew it. The second I seen it, I was like, you idiot. Hold on. This one. Okay, here we go.
Still submerged this second blow, hitting hard. Lake Lismore still submerged this second blow, hitting hard.
It's starting to rip people's hearts out. It's getting too much.
Homes swallowed in last month's deluge, surrounded by water again. Precious possessions still sitting on the curb.
And these are the family photos you lost?
More film, yeah. This is only this week's stuff that we keep bringing out here for them to get rid of and stuff, you know. It's pretty hard.
A beer in hand and putting on a brave face. Like many, Matt Lewis and his neighbour Steve are waiting for the water to go down to start clean-up 2.0. Michelle Cormick wading into her home. Inside there's not much left, but she's determined to stay.
This is still my home. But yeah, no, there'll be walls again.
Refusing to let the disaster get her down.
Waterfront views, but not quite the water that you'd like.
Downstream, the devastation is just as raw. 4 generations of the Rose family have lost 4 homes, 15 of them now living in caravans at Tucky Tucky.
We're a strong family unit. We'll work that out and also start to rebuild, hopefully.
The true toll of this double disaster is not yet clear. Businesses in the CBD are still underwater. So are the hardest hit homes. It will be at least a couple of days before they can get back in to see if there's anything left. There's still no trace of 55-year-old aged care nurse Anita Brackle, believed to be missing in floodwaters south of Lismore.
The riverine threat is certainly not over at this point in time.
The emergency moving south, soaking Maxville. The lower levels of homes inundated, street signs almost swallowed. Adam Simmons shows how high the water came on his internal garage door. It was a sleepless night for many.
You just don't know what to say anymore. It's just getting worse and worse every year.
And a big day of cleaning up and carrying on. Sophie Upcroft, 9 News.
Now that's devastating. This is not going to get better. So in this wrecking crew ideology, it's basically where they don't really want to show you that government can do anything. But I think that this is going to be a huge thing. And I think that this is got to be part of next election. We've got to start talking about it. It's going to go real bad real quickly if we don't start talking about climate change and dealing with it. But time is almost there, so I thought we would talk about a story from 3 years ago that has resurfaced. there is this moment where you can see that you could see where Facebook was going, and it's gone into this hyperdrive, and it started around the last election cycle. Okay, Sydney Boys High School group, which formally locked by moderators after debate. The alumni group of Scott Morrison's high school has been engulfed in a debate after former students said they were embarrassed to be associated with him. The Sydney Boys High School alumni Facebook group has been flooded with fiery exchanges since a former treasurer who attended the school from 1980 to 1985 was sworn in as Prime Minister. Formerly a public forum has now been locked by moderators after the debate got heated. The furor began as alumni wrote 24th of August, great to have the old boys PM, make a great PM. Doesn't say much about the science facility, faculty that he is a climate denialist, one reply. I feel shame that our school generated such a bigot, said another. Critics said that they oppose Morrison's record on climate change, LGBTQ rights, and his legacy as immigration minister that involved hardening of Australia's offshore detention policy underneath Operation Sovereign Borders. I did not know him at school, but I've seen him in this reprehensible dolt wield his powers over the detriment of us all, one wrote. Evil. Now I'm very embarrassed to have gone to school with him. You are definitely not taking on behalf of the old boy, said another former student. His political actions are a disgrace to humanity, Christian hypocrisy, mind-boggling. Hardly someone who holds up a model what turned out of this school. You can see from this where these moments are these people saying, hey, this is bad. But others, if I'm Morrison's, who had known him at school, I knew Scott Morrison. I know we were at high school together, and evil is not who he is. Another wrote, I'm proud to see him as PM. The school first graduate became Prime Minister, was a country party leader at early page, held the office for only 19 days after Joseph Lyons suddenly died in office in 1939. Okay, chaps are the posts. I've recently seen this forum of bizarre and demonstrated the worst of ourselves. I joined this forum at Touchpoint about high school and read a postmodern Lord of the Flies. In response, a commentator called him a see you next Tuesday. That is a sign that the Prime Minister was on the nose then. So what can you do to change that now? Ultimately, the goal is to change the government. That's where we need to be. And as many fancy tricks as the LNP want to pull, we know that they are just bad at this sort of thing. But Josh Frydenberg won't be the one to deliver them to you. Now, as we look to what his plan is, and it's clearly bad, we realise that he doesn't have a plan that's really for us. It's a picture may be worth 1,000 words, but in this here budget, a phrase repeated 51 times paints a vivid picture. The phrase funding for this measure already been provided for, and a Control F search budget paper 2 from previous 10 budgets reveal the generous route. See, budget paper 2 is the go-to-go document for anyone interested in policy and announcements. ABC is spruiking this. Why? I don't know. But I find it really weird that we're having an ABC that's got David Spears on it and all these other weirdos from Sky that are now saying, hey, trust us because we're from Sky, because Sky wasn't bad enough. They want to add them to our main watched news, ABC, because that's what it seems appropriate to do in this particular moment. I just don't think they think this stuff through. I mean, take a look at the way they talk about it. All new spending since the last budget update helped journalists and experts and the public in general determine whether money from a program is new or additional. But yeah, it seems to have been more of a sort of trickery. Inside budget paper 2, the phrases funding the next measure has already been provided for. The partial funding to this measure has already been providing for, essential to the trickery. In other words, they don't really show you how they do it. They just say that they did it, and that's that. And that is the overarching issue of where we're at. It's dishonest to its core. And I don't think ABC should be part of it. I don't think they should be part of the shambolic nature of talking about what this means for us. These papers essentially show us that the trickery that they've used in numbers, it's like the Kyoto trade-off numbers. They were using that to make it sound like we were reducing emissions, when really we had spiked such a dramatic level that it was out of control. Now, all governments play funny figures and talk about costing and where it's going to come from. But this particular government outright lies about that. And I think that the ABC shouldn't just call it trickery. They should call it lies, because that's precisely what that is. And I think that we're going to be left in a really, really dodgy place if we keep that going. But, I mean, he keeps dismissing the people on what is actually going on. And he's trying to have this front of, the budget's fine, we're united, this is all good, and nothing to see here. This is a sign that we are really, really in a bad position with him. And he will gaslight you. He has no qualms about telling you something that isn't true. This whole thing is something that is deeply dishonest. Deeply dishonest. I think that this is the first time where the media have had to call it trickery. I think that they're getting used to, they've got to get used to saying, no, it's an outright lie. There is no unity in the party. There's Senator Fioravanti Wells. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has described allegations about his 2007 Liberal pre-selection as bitter and malicious slurs, insisting that his party is ununified. Ahead of the upcoming federal election, both Saturday Paper and the Sydney Morning Herald reported on the contents of the statutory declarations signed by two men. Remember, he was sued for this. He was sued for exactly this level of deception. So don't be led astray into thinking maybe there's something to this. Statutory declarations can't be altered. If you alter this, you're committing a crime. It's which detail Mr. Morrison's battle to pre-selected for the seat of Cook ahead of the rival Michael Talk. According to reports, the men claim that Mr. Morrison urged people not to support Mr. Talk because his family was of a Lebanese heritage. He did exactly that. This is not a game anymore. We have a politician that is using racial vilification to cheat and win seats. He had a policy and a boat on his desk to sort of say, hey, I stopped the boats coming, as if the refugees were some big bad guy. He uses racial slurs to justify the nature of his being. But here's the part that makes me super angry. How many people know that he did that? How many people, I mean, the LNP know he did it. If Fierravanti Wells, as a senator, was only outraged now that she's on her way out, why help him from the get? That's where it gets a bit tricky. Why help him from the get if you know that this dude is a bad dude? See, it kind of smashes the hypocrisy of the whole situation as you're trying to claim that you have it all figured out and that you're on the up and up on this kind of thing, and that now you're talking truth. You can't talk smack as truth on your way out. You needed to say it when it happened. My guess is now that her career is over, she's going to be fine in the public sector. Someone would have already handed her a job at doing God knows what. But it doesn't matter. She's going to be fine. The rest of us that are left with this grifter of a Prime Minister isn't. But we're not going to be fine for a long time. This isn't fine. This isn't what fine looks like. He was adamant and explicit that the candidate of Lebanese heritage could not hold the seat of Cook. It's racial. No matter which way you slice it, this is racial. According to declaration reported by Sydney Morning Herald, Liberal Party member Scott Chapman, who wrote Scott Morrison, told me that if Michael Talk were to be pre-selected, there would be a swing against the Liberal Party in Cook because of Mr. Talk's Lebanese background. The ABC has not been able to verify those documents. Yeah, they can. That's a very easy thing to do. By FOIA. They're lying. Why they would lie about being able to prove something that simple, I don't know. But it's been well known for a long time. And denied the allegations the second day while campaigning in Tasmania on Sunday, dismissing them as untrue because the pants on fire rating wasn't already bad enough. We're now at this point where he just goes full on gaslight. It is simply untrue, and these are quite malicious and bitter slurs which are deeply offensive, and I reject them. So now people can see that he's honestly a racist along with it. As if the stop the votes policy wasn't already like the towel. Let's lean into it with, hey, the seat of Cook shouldn't be yours because you're Lebanese. And I think that's it. We're at a point where the Prime Minister says things, and because the news cycle doesn't take him seriously and they won't hold him accountable, we don't have any real change to this. Do you think the Liberal Party is going to change how they ultimately deal in something like this? My guess is no. I think real change comes at the ballot box in changing leader. But here's my issue, is that the Liberal Party doesn't get better as a party, and this is why they should permanently be an opposition. They aren't good in leadership, but they're definitely better off never leading this country again. But this leads me to the end of my evening. While it is an honour and an amazing experience with you guys every week to come back and do a brief introduction into this week in politics, which I deeply enjoy, I definitely think this will be integral as the election gets closer. Tune in next week for another week of This Week in Politics, and hopefully I'll see more of your comments and engage you a little bit more, because that to me is how this should work. Have a lovely evening and good night.